Cassandra Mitchell had been covering military stories for 3 years, but today she was about to become the story. When the C-130 Hercules transport aircraft lost both engines at 15,000 feet with 200 military personnel on board, everyone thought they were going to die. The captain had collapsed, the co-pilot was in shock, and the cargo hold was filled with panic. That's when the quiet journalist who'd been documenting the mission stood up, walked to the cockpit, and said the words that changed everything. "I'm an Air Force pilot. Move aside." Cassandra Mitchell, 34 years old, auburn hair, sharp green eyes, and always carrying her worn leather camera bag, was known throughout the Pentagon Press Corps as the military affairs specialist who never missed a detail. For 3 years, she'd been covering Department of Defense operations, interviewing commanders, and reporting on national security issues with an expertise that impressed even seasoned generals. But Cassandra had a past that even the Pentagon's highest-ranking officers didn't know about. 12 years ago, Major Cassandra "Viper" Mitchell was one of the United States Air Force's most distinguished pilots. She could fly anything from C-130 Hercules to C-17 Globemasters, and had even qualified on the F-15 Eagle. With 8,000 hours of military flight experience, 3 combat deployments, and a distinguished Flying Cross, she was the kind of officer the Air Force built recruitment campaigns around. Cassandra had graduated top of her class from the Air Force Academy, risen through the ranks with unprecedented speed, and served as both a transport and fighter pilot. Her squadron mates called her Iron Eagle Cass, and commanders assigned her the missions nobody else wanted to take. Until that night in Afghanistan changed everything. During Operation Enduring Freedom, Cassandra was piloting a C-130 medical evacuation flight from Kabul to Bagram Air Base, carrying 47 wounded soldiers. Taliban forces had launched a coordinated rocket attack on the forward operating base, and immediate medical evacuation was critical. Cassandra and her crew had taken off under enemy fire, in zero visibility conditions, with wounded men bleeding out in the cargo hold. During the flight, an RPG struck the aircraft. The hydraulic system was damaged, one engine failed, and they were taking small arms fire from the ground. Cassandra had to execute an emergency landing using only manual controls and a single engine in complete darkness on a rough desert strip with no runway lights. That night, she pulled off a miraculous landing. All 47 wounded soldiers survived. Cassandra was awarded the Bronze Star Medal. The media called her a hero. The Air Force fast-tracked her for promotion. But for Cassandra, it wasn't enough. The stress of that night, the weight of knowing that 47 lives depended entirely on her decisions, and the constant thought of, "What if I hadn't been good enough?" began eating away at her. PTSD symptoms started. Insomnia, anxiety attacks, and an obsessive fear of being responsible for others' deaths. 6 months later, Cassandra took medical leave. 3 months after that, she submitted her papers for early retirement from the Air Force. Her commanding officers were stunned. "Why are you leaving at the peak of your career?" they demanded. Cassandra simply said she wanted to find a different way to serve, and left it at that. She completely reinvented herself as a civilian journalist, joining the Pentagon Press Corps and specializing in military affairs reporting. But she never told anyone about her pilot background. Her resume listed former Air Force officer, with no specifics about her role or achievements. Everyone at the Pentagon knew her as Cassandra Mitchell, military affairs correspondent. Even generals who had served with her didn't connect the quiet journalist with the legendary Major Viper Mitchell. This morning, Cassandra was on a special assignment at Andrews Air Force Base. The Department of Defense was transferring 200 military personnel to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada for a joint training exercise. Cassandra had been embedded as a press representative to document the inter-service cooperation for a feature story. The aircraft was a C-130 Hercules, loaded with personnel from various elite units: Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Operations, Marine Force Recon, and intelligence officers. Young lieutenants sat next to battle-hardened sergeants, special operations warriors mixed with technical specialists. Cassandra sat in the cargo area among the military personnel, notepad and camera in hand. When she glanced toward the cockpit, she felt the familiar tug of nostalgia, but quickly pushed it aside. Those days are over, she told herself. The aircraft commander was Captain Marcus Thunder Thompson, a 15-year veteran C-130 pilot with an impeccable safety record. His co-pilot, First Lieutenant Jennifer Hawk Walsh, had 5 years of experience and a reputation for excellence. Staff Sergeant Carlos Martinez served as loadmaster, while Tech Sergeant Mike Johnson handled flight engineer duties. Under normal circumstances, it was an exceptional military crew. The flight proceeded smoothly for the first hour. Cassandra conducted interviews with crew members and took notes about the personnel being transferred. The familiar sound of the C-130's engines brought back memories she'd been suppressing for 3 years. At 2:47 p.m., everything changed. A metallic explosion echoed through the aircraft. Engine number 3 had failed catastrophically. The plane lurched violently to the left before Thompson corrected the yaw. In the cargo hold, the experienced military personnel exchanged knowing glances. They understood what engine failure meant. Cassandra immediately recognized the severity of the situation. The left inboard engine had gone completely silent. Thompson's voice came over the intercom with professional calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've experienced an engine malfunction. This is standard procedure, nothing to be concerned about. Please remain seated and secure." Under normal circumstances, a C-130 can safely fly and land on 3 engines. The crew was extensively trained for single-engine emergencies. It was manageable. At 2:48 p.m., engine number 4 failed. This time, the sound was far more alarming. Cassandra felt her blood run cold. Dual engine failure was extremely rare and potentially catastrophic. As Loadmaster Martinez passed by, he whispered urgently, "Ma'am, we just lost 2 engines. This is very bad." Cassandra's dormant pilot instincts immediately activated. The aircraft was beginning to lose altitude steadily. At 2:49 p.m., the crew sprang into emergency action. Flight Engineer Johnson was making urgent radio calls to the cockpit. Cassandra's trained ear picked up the communication. "Mayday! Mayday! Mayday! Andrews departure! This is Stallion 47. Dual engine failure, declaring emergency." "Stallion 47, Andrews departure. Say souls on board and fuel remaining. 203 souls on board. Approximately 2 hours fuel remaining. Request immediate vector to nearest suitable airport." Cassandra looked around the cargo hold. 200 of America's finest military personnel. Young officers who'd graduated from West Point and Annapolis, seasoned NCOs who'd served multiple combat deployments, special operations warriors who'd completed impossible missions. Even these battle-tested soldiers were showing signs of concern. At 2:50 p.m., disaster struck. Captain Thompson suddenly slumped forward in his seat. Massive heart attack. Lieutenant Walsh immediately attempted CPR but couldn't revive him. "Medic!" Walsh screamed over the intercom. Cassandra heard the panic in Walsh's voice as she broadcast, "Medical emergency in cockpit! Captain is down! Need immediate assistance!" That's when Cassandra realized that First Lieutenant Walsh, despite her competence, didn't have enough experience to handle a dual-engine emergency in a C-130 by herself, especially not with an incapacitated aircraft commander. She looked around at the 200 people depending on this aircraft. Marines who had survived Fallujah, Rangers who had fought in the mountains of Afghanistan, SEALs who had completed classified missions behind enemy lines. All of them were now helpless passengers. Cassandra's hands were still holding her notepad and press credentials, but her mind contained exactly what was needed: 8,000 hours of military flight experience and the knowledge of how to save everyone on board. 3 years ago, she had run from this responsibility. Today, she couldn't run from it. Cassandra set down her notepad, stood up, and walked determinedly toward the cockpit. Loadmaster Martinez moved to block her path. "Ma'am, you can't enter the cockpit during an emergency." "Sergeant," Cassandra said, her voice suddenly carrying the unmistakable authority of a military officer, "I'm Major Cassandra Mitchell, United States Air Force, and right now, I'm the most experienced pilot on this aircraft." Martinez's eyes widened in shock. "But you're a journalist." "Move aside, Sergeant. That's an order." Cassandra entered the cockpit. Walsh was in near panic, Thompson was unconscious, and the instrument panel showed their desperate situation. "Walsh," Cassandra said with firm but calm authority. "Look at me. Take deep breaths. Give me a situation report." "Ma'am, who are you? You're not part of the crew." "Lieutenant, I'm Major Mitchell, former C-130 pilot. What's our current status?" Cassandra quickly scanned the instruments. Altimeter showing 11,000 feet and descending rapidly. Engines 1 and 2 still running normally. Engines 3 and 4 completely failed. Hydraulics reading normal. Flight controls still responsive. She immediately took over radio communications. "Andrews departure, Stallion 47. This is Major Mitchell assuming aircraft command. Captain has suffered medical emergency, requesting priority handling for emergency landing." "Stallion 47, identify yourself. Who is Major Mitchell?" "Former Air Force pilot, currently embedded press, aircraft commander incapacitated due to medical emergency. Dual engine failure, need immediate vector to nearest suitable airfield." Cassandra's professional military radio discipline and calm demeanor impressed the air traffic controller. "Stallion 47, nearest suitable airfield is Dover Air Force Base, 89 miles northeast. Alternative Baltimore-Washington International, 67 miles north." Cassandra quickly calculated their options. Current altitude 10,500 feet and falling. The C-130's glide ratio was approximately 20-1. From this altitude, they could glide roughly 40 miles maximum. BWI was barely within range. "Stallion 47, requesting Dover Air Force Base. Declare full emergency, 203 souls on board." "Roger, Stallion 47. Dover has been notified. Runway 01 is available. Emergency vehicles are standing by." Cassandra turned to Walsh. "Jennifer, you're my co-pilot. Pull out the emergency checklist. I'm taking aircraft control." She smoothly assumed control of the aircraft, adjusting it to optimal glide speed, checking weight distribution, and initiating fuel dumping procedures to reduce landing weight. In the cargo hold, word spread quickly that an experienced pilot had taken command, though no one knew exactly who she was. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a different Rodriguez, was explaining to nearby personnel, "Apparently we have a qualified pilot up front now. Stay calm and stay ready for emergency landing procedures." For the next 15 minutes, Cassandra flew the crippled aircraft with the expertise that had made her a legend. She executed a perfect approach to Dover, evaluated weather conditions, and planned the landing pattern with mathematical precision. "Stallion 47, Dover Tower. Do you have the runway in sight?" "Affirmative, Dover. Visual contact with runway 01. Requesting straight-in approach." "Cleared for straight-in approach runway 01. Wind 350 degrees at 15 knots. Emergency vehicles are in position." Cassandra brought the aircraft into a perfectly aligned approach. Landing a C-130 on 2 engines was challenging but manageable for a pilot of her caliber. At 3:03 p.m., the aircraft's wheels touched down on Dover's runway. Cassandra executed a perfect flare, achieving a smooth landing that would have been impressive even under normal circumstances. Without reverse thrust from the failed engines, she used wheel brakes and aerodynamic drag to bring the massive aircraft to a complete stop. The cargo hold erupted, first in stunned silence, then in thunderous applause. 200 military personnel were alive and safe. Cassandra completed the engine shutdown procedures and exited the cockpit. Every person in that cargo hold was staring at her, battle-hardened soldiers applauding the woman they had assumed was just a journalist. A Marine gunnery sergeant approached her. "Ma'am, who the hell are you?" "That was some of the finest flying I've ever witnessed." "Major Cassandra Mitchell, United States Air Force, retired," she said, speaking her military rank aloud for the first time in 3 years. Lieutenant Walsh asked, "Ma'am, why didn't you tell us you were a pilot when you boarded?" Cassandra smiled. "Because I'm not active duty anymore, Lieutenant. I'm a journalist now. But once a pilot, always a pilot." After the incident, Cassandra's military background was fully revealed. The Pentagon investigated everything, pulling her complete service record, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, 8,000 flight hours, 3 combat deployments, and a service record that read like a textbook for military excellence. The Secretary of the Air Force personally called Cassandra and offered her immediate return to active duty with a promotion. But Cassandra made a different choice. "I serve my country differently now," she told the press conference. "Journalism is also a form of service, but my pilot skills will always be available when needed." Instead of returning to active duty, Cassandra remained with the Pentagon Press Corps, but also joined the Air Force Reserve as a part-time instructor pilot. "That day taught me," Cassandra said in an interview with Air Force magazine, "that hiding our skills isn't just a disservice to ourselves, it's a disservice to the people we're meant to serve. Sometimes life forces you to be exactly who you were trained to be." Cassandra's story became legend in military aviation circles. She earned the unofficial call sign, the journalist pilot, though she preferred to be called simply Cassandra Mitchell. "People want to call me a hero," she says, "but I was just a service member in the right place at the right time, doing what duty required. Every military person is the pilot of their own aircraft. Sometimes you just have to fly someone else's too." Today, Cassandra still works for the Pentagon Press Corps, still covers military stories. But now with an addition. She trains young pilots in the Air Force Reserve, teaching them not just technical skills, but leadership under pressure. "Being a pilot isn't just about aircraft operation," she tells her students. "It's about command responsibility, decision-making under stress, and valuing other people's lives above your own comfort. That applies not just in the cockpit, but in every aspect of military service." The passengers of Stallion 47 send Cassandra thank you letters every year. Military careers continue, families grow, service goes on, all because of the courage and competence one woman demonstrated during 16 critical minutes. And Cassandra? She still walks into the Pentagon every morning and covers military journalism. Because sometimes the most important stories are hidden in the backgrounds of the people telling them. On Cassandra's desk sit 2 items, her press credentials and her retired Air Force pilot wings. Both remind her daily of who she is and what she serves. "Service takes many forms," Cassandra says. "Sometimes it's in the cockpit, sometimes it's in the newsroom. But the goal is always the same: protect and serve the people who matter most.